So let's look at multiply and divide then. Okay, so not a whole lot more to learn with multiplication and division. It's still the same idea. So the first part, remember, the goal of solving equations is what? It's to isolate the variable, get the letter by itself, okay? To do this, you need to isolate the variable using inverse operations, okay? So next part, what's the opposite of adding 23? Subtracting 23. Or the opposite of subtracting 18? Adding 18, okay? What would be the opposite of multiplying by negative 15? Dividing by negative 15. And finally, what's the opposite of dividing by 8? Multiplying by 8, okay? So let's take a look at what these multiplication problems look like. Let's go back to my sheet here. I'm gonna flip it over. So one thing that I want to point out, this may be how you're used to seeing multiplication. 3 times 8 is equal to 24. That's no more, okay? We're to a level, we're to a point that this cannot be a multiplication sign anymore because it's an X. When we're talking about algebra, that's a variable, okay? And we have to be able to distinguish between what's multiplication and what's an X. So no more X's. I try not to give you any work that has X's in there for multiplication, but unfortunately some just do, and it's worth it for you to have that worksheet, okay? But I want to start there. Instead of seeing 3 times 8 written this way, you're now going to see it written like this. Okay? 3 times 8, a number next to a parentheses. I mean, I think technically they could even both have parentheses around them, but they're not needed. 3 eighths, 3 times 8, 3 times 8, 8 times 3, 24, okay? So this is how you see it written. In algebra, if I want to say 3 times x, that's 3x. 3 times x. Anytime a number and a letter are next to each other, that means multiplication. 3 times p. Okay? So you need to recognize what multiplication looks like. It's different now. Okay, it doesn't have an x. We're going to see it written like this. And if it's a number times a variable, they're just next to each other. All right? So let's do a practice problem. 5k equals 25. 5k equals 25. Think about what this means. 5 times something equals 25. 5 times what equals 25? I hope you have your facts memorized and you know that, okay? What we know is k has to be 5 because 5 times 5 is 25. But how do we get that algebraically? Well, we need to isolate the variable. So right now, the variable is not alone. It's got a 5 next to it, okay? We want it down to this, which technically has a 1 in front of it. A 1k and a k are the exact same thing. And so if it's just 1, we don't even write it, all right? Because we can see it's only 1k. We can see this is 5k's or 5 times k. So we want to get k alone or bring it down to 1. What we see here is multiplication. So what's the inverse of multiplication? What's the opposite? Division. Yeah, we're going to undo this multiplication and we're going to divide by whatever we see here. So in this problem, k was multiplied by 5. So I'm going to undo that by dividing by 5. Now ask yourself, what's 5 divided by 5? 5 divided by 5 is 1. Okay? We can also see these as they cancel each other out. And this k comes down. So we isolated it. We brought it down to a single k. But we did not balance it. So if I divide this side by 5, I have to keep it balanced by dividing the other side by 5. And 25 divided by 5 is 5. Make sense? All right. Let's try another one. How about negative 36 is equal to 12n? All right. Go ahead and try this one. Pause your screen, give this one a try, and then come back, okay? All right, so again, locate the variable. It's here, so this is the side we're working on. We want to bring this down and isolate it to 1n. What we see is multiplication, and so our clue is we need to undo that. Undo multiplication. The opposite of multiply is divide. And you know what? I pointed out what multiplication is going to look like. I didn't point out what division is going to look like. What you may notice in this first problem, how I showed division looks like a fraction. So does this. It's because that's how division looks in algebra. There's no more division signs. There's no more boxes, okay? You're going to show division like a fraction. Okay, and so this was multiplied by 12, so I'm going to divide by 12. I really encourage you to start showing your work this way so that you're just used to seeing it, okay? 12 divided by 12 cancels and leaves 1n. Keep it balanced. Divide one side by 12, divide the other side by 12. 36 divided by 12 is 3, and a negative divided by a positive. Think back to your rules. When it comes to multiply and divide, different signs always give you a negative answer. So n is equal to negative 3. Let's check our work. We're saying this is negative 3. 12 times negative 3 equals negative 36. That is true. So I know I got it correct. Okay. All right, last thing, division equations. As I said a minute ago, division looks different. So let's do c divided by 8 is equal to 4. C divided by 8 is equal to 4. There's the equal sign, put my line. Remember, we want to isolate the variable by undoing it. Undoing what we see. So what we see is C was divided by 8. What's the opposite of divide by, excuse me, what's the opposite of divide by 8? Multiply by 8. Okay, multiply by 8. And, you know, there's a couple ways of looking at this. I want to show you why it works. If we see this as a fraction, we would multiply that by 8 over 1, right? And then you multiply across. So on the top, you would end up with 8c, and on the bottom, you would end up with 8. What I want to point out is what this looks like. It's division. What's 8 divided by 8? 1. 1. Or you can see these as canceling, okay? So you don't have to do this. You don't have to show this. But what you do need to know is why it works, okay? You see divide by 8, you solve that by multiplying by 8, okay? Those cancel. That leaves C alone. Multiply that side by 8, you're going to multiply this side by 8. 4 times 8 is equal to 32. Check your work. Go back to the original equation. C divided by 8, 32. 32 divided by 8 equals 4. That is true. Okay, so 32 is the answer for that variable. One more example, then we're going to do some practice problems, and then we'll be done. So how about -5 is equal to p divided by 2. All right, why don't you go ahead and give that a try. Give that problem a try, and then come back and check your work. Okay, just a little review. First thing we're going to do is isolate, and then the second thing we're going to do is balance. Okay, so isolate. Identify the variable. In this one, it's p. It's on the right side, so that's the side I'm working on. What do we see here? We see division, so we need to undo that. What's the opposite of dividing by 2? Multiplying by 2, okay? And so I just put that to the side, show it as multiplication by putting the 2 in the parentheses. That cancels and leaves p. Balance. I multiply this side by 2. I'm going to multiply that side by 2. 2 times -5 is -10. P is equal to -10. Check our work. Here's the original equation. Okay, so I'm saying P is -10. 10 divided by 2 equals -5. That's true. I got the answer correct. Okay. All right, I'm going to go to the worksheet here. Let's go to the second page. All right, look at these first 6. Okay, go ahead and give those a try and come back and we will check your work. All right, so let's take a look at these 6 problems and then we will wrap things up, okay? So go back to my white sheet here. All right, so number 1, 3a equals 18. Remember, anytime a number is next to a letter, directly next to it, it means multiply. So 3 times what is 18? You should know this when I say it that way. 3 times 6 is 18, right? How do we solve it algebraically? We need to get a alone. We need to undo this multiplication. So we see multiply, which means we divide by what we see. 3 divided by 3 is 1a, a single a. Keep it balanced. Divide by 3, do it to the other side. 18 divided by 3, excuse me, is 6. All right, plug it in. 3 times 6 equals 18. I know I got it correct. Number 2, b divided by 4 is equal to 12. Okay, what divided by 4 is equal to 12? We see division means we multiply. The opposite of divide by 4 is multiply by 4. Those cancel. Leaves b alone. If I multiply this side by 4, I must multiply that side by 4 as well. 12 times 4, b is 48. Plug it in. 48 divided by 4 equals 12. It sure does. I know I got it correct. Number 3. Here's my equal sign. We're working on the right side because that's where the variable is. F has been divided by 3. I'm going to undo that by multiplying by 3. Isolate that variable. Get it alone. If I multiply that side by 3, I must multiply this side by 3 as well. 3 times 4 is 12. Bring down, bring down. All right, looks like I'm done. F is equal to 12. Plug it in. 12 divided by 3 equals 4. That's true. Number 4, 48 is equal to 6y. What kind of problem is this? This is a multiplication problem. So I'm going to solve it by dividing. 6 is multiplied by y, or y is multiplied by 6. So I'm going to do the opposite, which is divide. 6 divided by 6 brings this down to a single y. What I do on one side, I do on the other. Keep it balanced. And 48 divided by 6 is 8. Last two. 121 is equal to 11a. What kind of problem is this? It's a multiplication problem. That's what I see. So I'm going to solve it by dividing. 11 times a is the problem, so I'm going to divide by 11. Bring it down to a single a. Keep it balanced. Divide one side by 11. Divide the other side by 11. 121 divided by 11 is 11. Plug it in. 11 times 11 equals 121. That's true. And finally, g divided by 7 is equal to 7. What divided by 7 equals 7? I want to isolate the variable. In the problem, we see divided by 7, so I'm going to undo it with the opposite. Multiply by 7. Cancels. Okay, that leaves g alone. If I multiply this side by 7, I have to do the other side by 7 as well. 7 times 7 is 49. G's alone, so that's my answer. Check our work. G, 49 divided by 7 equals 7. That's true. Okay, so that's how you do those 6. I gave you a lot of practice problems in that one worksheet. There's quite a few. I also sent you another worksheet to work through that's got all of the 4 operations combined. Okay, so you're really gonna have to think as you work through those. But what I want you to know is that algebra is totally doable. You can all do it. There's no reason you can't do it. Just because there's letters in there doesn't make it complicated. Okay, don't let your fear keep you from learning this. It really comes down to the equal sign. Okay, the equal sign is the reason we're able to solve these. Start with the end in mind. Okay, you do algebra every day already. Okay, when you needed to come to class, you were doing algebra because you needed to get there on time, so you had to leave early enough to do that. And what you did is not the same thing as the other person from class did, because their algebra is different. They may live closer or further away. So even though their end is the same as yours, their beginning, their problem is different, if that makes sense. Okay, it varies depending on where you live, on what time you need to leave to get to class on time. So 2 big ideas for solving equations, and we're going to talk about this in the next lesson, which is multi-step equations. But it really comes down to what our goal is, and that is to isolate the variable. That's where we start. Find the variable and start working on that side, getting it alone. But remember, you must keep it balanced. In an equation, there's an equal sign, which means it starts out with both sides equal. And if you change one side, you must change the other, okay? So keep balanced. 2 big ideas for solving equations. Okay, hopefully that made sense to you. And the good news is, even when we start doing complicated equations, it all comes back to this. All right. Think of the meaning. Think about, what you see happening, and you're undoing that. You're undoing the problem. So I don't know. I guess let me know if something wasn't clear. Give me your questions, and I will try to answer them. But I don't know. That is 1-step equations, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, and how we solve those. All right. So I hope you all have a good day, and look forward to the next video, which will be multi-step equations. Okay. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.